Cloud Bigtable. Now, if you're looking for a NoSQL database system, this may be the solution for you. Now, Cloud Bigtable has some pretty impressive features, functions, scalability, capabilities, you name it. Let's go ahead and talk more about what Bigtable is, why you may want to use it, and then some of the features that go along with it. So Cloud Bigtable is a fully managed NoSQL database. It is a petabyte scale. Now, petabyte, right? That's pretty significant. That's a lot more than terabytes. So with that said, it has very low latency. Now, generally, Bigtable is called Bigtable because it's really considered a sparsely populated table that you could scale to billions of rows and thousands of columns, which, should allow you to store terabytes or petabytes of data. And again, this is really a powerful solution when it comes to scalability. Throughput, for example, again, could support significant workloads. You can also essentially appreciate that it can learn and adjust to access patterns as well. For example, you can, essentially create your application and create, for example, like persistent multi-dimensional sorting maps. You could index by row, timestamps, whatever you want. It's also too, you could also access this with HBase, Apache HBase. Now, a lot of confusion over why you may want to use Cloud Bigtable over HBase. A lot of the benefits of Bigtable is the fact that it's a managed service, of course. But you could scale Bigtable with the machine counts. You're also not limited by QPS. It is, again, this is low ops, so it's managed. And you could resize your configuration essentially in seconds. It uses a low latency storage stack, and it has redundant auto scaling and seamless cluster resizing. Now, if we go over here to Cloud Bigtable, you're going to probably want to use this when you have essentially heavy reads and writes, perhaps a lot of events. Could be, of course, many other use cases. Another use case is, of course, big data. And if you use an HBase, you're probably using big data services somewhere, right? When it comes to processing, whether it's streaming or batch, you can, of course, accommodate streaming or batch, however you so choose. You could use, for example, with streaming data. Now, streaming data is essentially what? Sequential data, right? And this data will essentially follow frameworks like data flow, Spark, Storm, etc. Or you could also use it with batch processing. For example, you could use this to Hadoop MapReduce or data flow as well, Spark. Again, you could also have it being written back to Bigtable as well, or to another downstream database. A lot of good capabilities there. When it comes to processing, just one thing I meant to mention is that the processing is actually separate from storage. So you have nodes that essentially will write to the storage. So again, this is separated in the sense that you don't have a sequential process. This is more like in parallel, I guess is probably the good term to use. A lot of good capabilities with Bigtable. Just realize if this is of interest, you want to spend a little bit more time than what we could give it here. And how does it compare to other capabilities and functions with the other services? Capacity is of course petabyte scale. This is a key value HBase API that is. You could scan rows, you could put rows. Again, if you're into databases, you'll definitely understand what that means. When it comes to usage, again, this is a no-ops approach. It's highly scalable, significant throughput, really good for flattened data. With Bigtable, this is, again, a good choice for big data apps where you may have your streaming and your batch processing, right? Now, remember, when it comes to processing, you could process a couple different ways. You go through the API, or you could stream, or you could create batch processes. Now, with the batch process, for example, right, what are you doing? You're essentially reading from and writing to Bigtable, for example, through typically a batch process like MapReduce or data flow, so on and so on. Spark also could work. Streaming is essentially where you're going to have the data being basically written event by event through typically a framework and through a framework. And some of those processing frameworks could be data flow, Spark, streaming, Storm. Those are some that are out there. And then the data API. The data API is essentially a data service layer that, would essentially be used to connect to the managed VMs, the HBase server, any Java servers, etc. This is, again, something that you can choose on how you want to use Bigtable for your application. So you have some good, solid flexibility. When it comes to processing, remember that it's separate from storage, right? You have your clients that are accessing the Bigtable node. Bigtable has a separate process that is writing that to the Colossal file system. This is something behind the Google Bigtable service. This is essentially part of Bigtable. You don't have to worry about anything when it comes to the file structure. You're more worried about how you develop your NoSQL, database instances. That's really what you want to worry about. Now, Bigtable integrates with popular big data tools, right? For example, Hadoop, MapReduce, right? Data flow, Spark, you name it. It supports open source, right? Anything from Apache. It uses a standard HBase API, right? So if you have developers that are already familiar with HBase, this will be a fairly easy ramp up for them. Link is here. Here are some additional links. Let's proceed on to the next module.